Field, one of the most measured, smart, intelligent, well-rounded draft people I've ever worked with in my life. And I set that up because Field Yates joins us now from ESPN. And Field, I called you, full transparency, because I was watching NFL Live the other day, and you were at Colorado's Pro Day, and you said about Travis Hunter that it's the first time you'd seen him in person, and you'd never seen anything like it. And that hit me because you're not a hot take guy. So let's start there. What stood out to you so much about him? Why is it that different?
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me on, first of all. And, Travis Hunter, when I arrived to Colorado the night before the pro day, there was some uncertainty whether he would do anything. And given how much he's accomplished and being the reigning Heisman Trophy winner and being in this era that we're in now where we don't necessarily see everything from the top prospects before the draft, if he had done nothing, I wouldn't have faulted him one bit. He decided, though, to catch passes from Shador Sanders, and just seeing him warm up, I swear it was like watching NFL general managers and coaches and scouts and imagining them admiring their children at their own sporting events. That's how close attention so many onlookers were paying to Travis Hunter. And then the way that he moves, it's almost like a video game who – it's like you don't really know how to describe it other than that, but the movement skills are so sudden, yet he's so controlled. He was going no gloves throughout the workout. Apparently he doesn't even need gloves to have the kind of hands that he does. He just was effortless in every single way. And, I know one of the big questions about Travis Hunter for those that are picking the smallest of nits with him is, how big is he? And, he's a lean guy for sure, but he looked like he was closer to 6'1" to me than maybe where he had been listed at previously. So the size wasn't really a concern for me going into the pro day, but I left the pro day feeling even less concerned about it. So the Titans are probably going to head towards Cam 1 at number 1 overall. I don't have a major issue with that. Of course, this team has kind of forecasted its move with the way that it's treated the quarterback position this offseason. That being said, given how much uncertainty there is between the next best quarterback in the draft class, I would be very surprised if the Browns can bring themselves to passing on Travis Hunter at number 2 overall.
Field Yates is here with us on Fox Sports Sunday. Of course, you can check out all the work that he does on ESPN.com as well as on ESPN. To that point then, Field, why Travis Hunter over Abdul Carter with the opportunity to pair Carter potentially with a generational pass rusher in Myles Garrett, who they've finally gotten to pacify after a while?
Yeah, I was going to say $40 million a year would do that to all of us probably.
Oh, yeah.
With Myles Garrett. Yeah.
Money is the answer to all your questions. A wise man, Tony Kornheiser, once said.
That's right. Tony continues to find ways to succinctly describe all of the world's issues. I would just say this is there a lot of precedent for guys playing two positions in the NFL? Obviously, the answer is no. We've seen players have some level of college success, whether it's Champ Bailey or Chris Gamble or Charles Woodson playing on both sides of the ball. But we really haven't had a player that is anywhere close to where Travis Hunter was this past season, really the past 2 seasons, when you look back at the last, let's call it 40 or 50 years. I mean, you're going back into the era of like Dick Butkus and Paul Hornig and people like that. If we're talking about versatility, that even comes close to where Travis Hunter is at. So I don't think the idea of him playing both ways is unfounded. And, Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, I'm not going to sit here and say that if the Browns take Carter at number 2 overall, they've made some sort of catastrophic error. You have to pick one, and the versatility and the opportunity to check, even if it's 1.5 of your boxes off, wide receiver and a half of the snaps defensive back, or a full-time corner and a half of the snaps wide receiver, to me is just too tantalizing. The Browns have so many needs right now on their roster. Of course, quarterback is still amongst them, but the fact that they could add a player who would instantly become their biggest threat on offense for a defense that just 2 seasons ago was pretty darn good, to me, is tantalizing enough that I'd be thinking long and hard about it at number 2.
How panicked should Browns fans be about the fact that they simply don't? I mean, Kenny Pickett? What are we doing, Field?
Yeah, I think Fitz probably there's a couple more shoes to drop here. Thankfully we're only 2.5 weeks from the draft, so we don't have to speculate on which quarterbacks will go in which round for a whole lot longer. But it does feel like some teams in this feel as though in this draft specifically that past Cam Ward, you might be better served sort of living in the round 2, round 3 quarterback land, which is unusual, or maybe at least unusual relative to last season when we had the biggest gap ever in quarterbacks being taken, which was Bo Nix at 12 and then not not again until Spencer Rattler was picked in the 5th round. It was 100-some picks later. So it feels very different after last year's class had such a sort of feast or famine nature to your quarterback evaluation. But it seems like teams are much more comfortable with some of these day 2 options or even late round 1 options where a team would trade back into the 1st round, secure that 5th-year option, and beat out whatever competition they may have to acquire those quarterbacks. On top of that, Kirk Cousins, until there is absolute 100% clarity, and I would say this, not from the Falcons side. Whatever they say, they're doing what they have to do, right? They are doing, general manager speak until there's a Kirk Cousins resolution. But until we hear from Kirk that he plans to be content as Michael Penix's backup for this upcoming season, I am not discounting the possibility that Kirk Cousins winds up a Cleveland Brown. At this point, it would have to be through a trade because the Falcons got past that guarantee date for Kirk Cousins, at which point, $10 million more to eventually cut him is negligence of the highest order. So I think the Browns probably have their eyes set on Kirk Cousins maybe during draft weekend or shortly thereafter, plus another young quarterback they can acquire, maybe not at pick number 2, but a little bit later on in the draft.
Field, in your sit-down with Shador at the Colorado Showcase, not Pro Day. I know Dion was keen on calling it a showcase this time around. He told you would be a fool not to pick me, talking about teams who might potentially pass on him in the draft. Is he a prospect where you see, the greatest amount of potential variance for where he might actually go, given the way that these quarterback dominoes continue to fall and where Pittsburgh may not necessarily be keen on a quarterback in the draft at 21, but still doesn't have a hard resolution on Aaron Rodgers yet?
And until they do, you can't just treat it as if it's a fait accompli, right? You have to assume there's a possibility he won't come to you because we have seen Aaron Rodgers operate on his own timeline and certainly marches to the beat of his own drum. So what I would say is, and Buck, I have a piece coming out next week about players who have wide ranges. So you have good instincts relative to where the ESPN.com editorial instincts are as well, because it is a question that people are asking is, are we going to have the story of the first night of the draft be the wait for Shador Sanders? My answer is possibly. I think the range for Shador is as early as 2, and I think it's probably as late as, I'm going to use pick 21 where the Steelers pick. But you could make the case that it's probably a little earlier than 21 because I think what's possible is, teams don't feel as convicted about taking Shador or Jackson Dart in the top 5, but they feel fine with the idea of trading back up into the 1st round from, Cleveland has pick 33, the Giants have pick 34, that maybe you see some sort of action of that variety once we get to, I guess it would probably be like 10:30 Eastern time, the back half of that 1st round of the draft. So I do think that is certainly in play here. Shador is probably near the top of the list in terms of the wide ranges for quarterbacks very early, but Jackson Dart is in that same category as well because I think Jackson's range starts inside the top 10. I don't know if it's as high as Shador Sanders, but it could go from pick 9, New Orleans, to maybe pick 34, which is the Giants' 2nd-round pick as things presently stand.
As always, Field, I appreciate you, my friend. Be sure to check out the First Draft pod wherever you get your pods and on YouTube. You guys are doing great work. I listen to it all the time at the gym. It's how I help my own prep for the draft. So, Field, always appreciate your expertise, brother.
Thank you.
You guys are the best. And there goes Fitz bragging about how he has time to work out, unlike the rest of us.
Well,
No,
that's Field. You got kids, all right?
I've got you got kids you're dealing with. You got pro days you're dealing with. You got all kind of things
Field's
going on.
a natural
Fitz is just running around in the wild.
I'm just running around trying to make sure that my man boobs look good. Field, always appreciate you, brother.
See you guys.
And I worked man boobs into the show, so that
You're
makes
doing
me
a
a
great
total
job
adult.
on that
Thank
front,
you.
by the way. You looked great last time I
Thank
saw you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.